It is now the unofficial start to the college football season. I'm Pete Mundo. We are Heartland College Sports. And yes, Big 12 Media Days is taking place this week in Las Vegas. And it's time to bring you the top 5 storylines to follow as we get set for Big 12 Media Days coming up this week. We will have a staff there. Joe Tillery, Matthew Postins will be there on behalf of Heartland College Sports. So we will have, no doubt in my mind, the best Big 12 coverage of media days this week from Las Vegas as the conference now goes to 16 teams. So before I get you those top 5 storylines, as always, hit that thumbs up on the video below on YouTube. We appreciate you on the podcast. Drop us 5 stars. I know it's the offseason, but it's never the offseason when you're building an audience like we are. So thanks for being here. We also appreciate you guys on Instagram Live joining us. And as always, on the radio show. So it's a fascinating time in the Big 12. 4 new teams are in. They'll be at Media Days for obviously the first time as Big 12 members. It is year 2 for 4 teams in the Big 12, but I will give you the top 5 storylines that are worth watching. Number 1, Deion Sanders. Let's be honest. Deion Sanders is the biggest star, not just in the Big 12, but Deion Sanders is the biggest individual star in college football. And there's not a close second. Yes, the biggest star is a head coach. And Deion Sanders was the biggest star in college football last year. Now he's in the Big 12 conference, in a conference that does not have a traditional blue blood program. Deion is going to get the biggest scrum, and it's not going to be close. He is going to get the most media attention, and it's not going to be close. And this is all good for the Big 12. First off, yes, there will be some animosity. There will be some jealousy about that. That's good for the Big 12. For a Big 12 that is looking to build some new rivalries, that is looking to build some new teams to hate, Deion Sanders is going to fill that role. Now, I won't hate it at all. Trust me, it's going to be good for business having Deion around. But it is something that if you're a Big 12 fan and you're looking at all the attention Deion's getting when his team is predicted to go 5-7 or 6-6, you're like, what the heck? If you're an Iowa State fan, you're like, can I get a little attention over here? I got a coach who knows how to win, who's proven he can win. No one wants to talk to the guy. Kansas State fans feeling the same way. Deion, is going to be 20 deep at his podium when he's talking to the media. That's good for the Big 12. The Big 12 should be embracing that because he is right now the biggest star in the sport, and you have it. And you have it in a conference that does not have blue blood programs to carry you in the eyes of the national media. Notice what I said there, in the eyes of the national media, because the media is obsessed in college football, unlike any other sport, with the logo on the side of the helmet. More so than, obviously, pro sports, and more so than college basketball as well. It's unlike anything else you see in any other sport. So without that, having Deion Sanders is good because there is no bigger storyline in college football right now. So Big 12 fans should embrace it. They should run with it. They should own it. And they should realize that any attention Deion is getting is indirectly attention to the Big 12. If people are watching games this year because of Deion Sanders, that means they're watching a Big 12 game, which means they might be getting a chance to see some of the other teams in the Big 12 that have an opportunity to play or could end up playing in a college football playoff. That is nothing but a win. So this is all good stuff. Now, number 2 on the storylines to watch at Big 12 Media Days this week. I want to see what Utah's all about. I want to gauge Utah's openness to the Big 12 Conference because we know that Utah, it's not that they came kicking and screaming to this conference, but certainly things have been said by Kyle Whittingham. There were some comments last year that maybe insinuated they weren't going to be in this league all that long. We know there's been a loudmouth bunch of their fan base that has just been like, all anti-Big 12. Although I will tell you, the more Utah fans I meet, the more I like Utah and the Utah fan base. I see them all the time on our forums. Utah may have the largest contingent of fans right now who are active on the Heartland College sports forums. So I'd like you to join us over there. It's free. That community is growing every single day, and you can go sign up right now at heartlandcollegesports.com and click on the forums tab and sign up and interact with our staff and other Big 12 fans. I like them more and more every day, but I am curious to gauge the temperature of Utah as a program, starting at the top with Kyle Whittingham, and what his attitude is towards the Big 12. You know he's going to be asked about it, right? So what's his attitude going to be? Is it going to be one of those deals where it's like, yeah, you know, we're here. It's too bad about the Pac-12. I'm just here to coach football. We're just here to play games. We play who's on the schedule. Or is it like, no, this league has welcomed us with open arms. We love already being members of this conference. We are excited to compete at the top of this conference. Like, what does he say? I don't know. He hasn't done a ton of media since all this news has come down, or at least he hasn't done a ton of media about this issue since the news has come down. So this is going to get very interesting and will be our first chance to get a feel for what exactly Utah's pulse is as they become members of the Big 12. Do they join the rest of the league and kind of swim in the same direction, or do they want to be kind of that big, bad, hated wolf like a Texas? I don't think they want to be that. I really don't, in talking to more fans on our forums, but I do wonder that. And if they want to embrace that role, maybe they do. I don't know. But we'll be watching, we'll be following. And yes, for those of you asking on YouTube, we will have the posters, we will have the flags and whatnot for the 4 new teams coming in the next few weeks. You know, they don't officially join the Big 12 until August 2nd. It's not August 1st, it's August 2nd. I confirmed that with the league office in the last couple of weeks. So kind of random, but the 4 new members are official on August 2nd. The third biggest storyline at Big 12 Media Days this week. I'm Pete Mundo. We're Heartland College Sports. Thanks for being here and joining us as a part of the show. And if you're not yet, hit that thumbs up on YouTube, subscribe on the podcast, leave that 5-star rating and review. That way you help us continue to grow this show every single day. So number 3 on that list, who is more comfortable from last year's new 4 teams? Now, what's interesting is the one coach who actually had Big 12 experience who came in last year was Dana Holgorsen, and he got, he got his butt canned. So he's gone. So is it a Gus Malzahn? Is it a Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati? Is it a Kalani Sitake at BYU? The easy and the obvious answer to me is Gus Malzahn, because Gus Malzahn, first off, has run a big-time program at Auburn. Gus Malzahn is a guy who, had the most success of those newcomers last year and, frankly, was a couple of plays away from winning 8 or 9 games. So he's the natural guy. He comes in of the 4 with the highest expectations. So I expect Gus Malzahn to continue to grow into that role as a guy who's kind of looked at as a figurehead in this conference. And if he wins this year and if he exceeds expectations this year, he will be worthy of being in that conversation as one of the most respected coaches in this conference. He's recruiting like a maniac, by the way. If you haven't seen it here the last few days, Gus now has that UCF program for the 2025 class well inside of the top 20 of most recruiting rankings. And when it comes to the per player average, UCF is tops in the Big 12 right now. They are recruiting like crazy. Now, Malzahn's problem has never been recruiting. It's been development and then in-game stuff. But it's good to see. If you're a UCF fan, man, you've got to be happy about this guy. And I would not overlook Willie Fritz. I don't know Willie Fritz, the new Houston head coach. But there's a Lance Leipold-ish feeling to me to Willie Fritz that I don't think we should overlook. And I am fascinated to see what he's like and what he's all about. I mean, the guy wins, right? I mean, that's what he does. He wins wherever he goes, whether it's Tulane, whether it's Georgia Southern, whether it's Sam Houston State, and now he gets his big break later in life, kind of like Lance Leipold. He's 64 years old, and he's got his first big-time job, and he's sitting in the hottest recruiting bed in the country. And if he's got the personality to boot, then Houston is a massive sleeper team, not this year in the Big 12, but over the next 5, 6, 7 years. And I'm rooting for the guy. Dana Holgorsen, I could have told you this thing was going to crash and burn. I covered him for years at West Virginia. Dana Holgorsen had every excuse in the book. He was always whining, moaning, bitching, complaining. It was nonstop. He ran off to Houston because his buddy was the booster. He did okay as a group of 5, and then he gets to the big leagues, and he totally poops his pants again. I knew it was coming. We all knew. If you knew Dana Holgorsen, you knew it was coming. But Willie Fritz is a program builder. No nonsense, no BS, straight shooter, and that's exactly what Houston needs right now. So he could be a wild card here in all this, and I'm excited to see what Willie Fritz is all about as Big 12 Media Days get underway this week in Las Vegas. Now, what else am I watching? What are the other top storylines to follow here in the Big 12 with Media Days taking place this week? Who takes on that Godfather role? I mean, that coach that is kind of the spokesman for the conference. Now, I mentioned earlier, Deion Sanders is going to be the biggest star. But Deion's about Deion. Coach Prime is about Coach Prime. Coach Prime ain't about, carrying a conference on his back. That's just not who he is. That's not what he's about. Who is the Godfather? In my 15 years covering the Big 12, that mantle has been held by guys like Bill Snyder, Bob Stoops, Gary Patterson, guys who would advocate for the conference, guys who would advocate for change in college football that would help not just their conference, but their staff and the players and everything else. And they used their platforms and that podium to send messages to the powers that be. Normally, the coach at Texas or Oklahoma would have a little more cachet in terms of being that person. Texas didn't really have it since Mac Brown because, the program was a mess. But OU had it with Bob Stoops. Lincoln Riley didn't really want it. So the last few years, it was Gary Patterson who loved advocating for this league and loved fighting for this league. Bill Snyder was very good at it. So Bob Stoops, as I noted, was good at it. Who is it now without the Blue Bloods and so much turnover in this conference? There's one guy that comes to mind, and it's Mike Gundy. He's not only the longest tenured coach in this conference at 19 years, he's the second longest tenured coach in all of college football at the D1 level after Iowa's Kirk Ferentz. So he's the perfect guy, and Gundy's done it before. He's taken that role before. He's done all that before. But the question really becomes, does he want to do it? I hope he does. Because as much as we think of Mike Gundy, we think of the mullet, we think of Mike Gundy and the goofiness and, all that stuff. He is a guy who is wildly insightful and interesting beyond the surface area, look at my mullet kind of stuff. So I hope he embraces that for the good of the Big 12, for the good of college football, to try to rein in some of the insanity that's happening in this conference. I hope that Mike Gundy wants to embrace it, because if he does, it's good for the Big 12. Other guys I've thought about, Chris Kleiman has had the success to do it, but Chris Kleiman's never really struck me as a guy who's wanted to be that Godfather of the conference. Great coach, but has not struck me as that kind of guy. Similar for Lance Leipold, and the other problem for Lance Leipold is he's still the head coach at Kansas. He would have to have substantial long-term success at a program like Kansas for the Kansas football coach to be the face and the spokesperson of the conference, probably longer than he's going to be coaching. So I just don't think the Kansas football coach, with all due respect, can embrace and be that person. It's not a knock on Leipold. It's just a knock on the history of Kansas football and where it's been. So the guy, if I'm looking forward 5 or 10 years, who would be awesome at that job is Texas Tech's Joey McGuire. That would be a lot of fun. I would love that for the Big 12. But it just doesn't seem, they just haven't won enough yet. If Joey McGuire turns Texas Tech into a year in, year out Big 12 contender over the next half a decade, then there's a conversation. But you can't really be the spokesman and the godfather and the vocal voice for the conference when you haven't had the success yet. And McGuire is starting to turn this thing around, but he hasn't had that massive success by any stretch of the imagination. So that's why he can't be that guy. As much as I think he'd be great at it, you can't have him be that guy right now. You just can't. But certainly would be a lot of fun to see. So, meantime, last and not least, but last thing here, and then I'll get to some of your questions and comments on the show. The last biggest storyline to follow at Big 12 Media Days this week is Las Vegas. Is it a boom or is it a bust? Now, if you're a fan, you might say, Pete, why do I care where Big 12 Media Days is? I'm not going. I'm going to read your guys' coverage. I'm going to listen to your podcasts, watch your shows. I'm going to check out your forums and everything else. Well, the Big 12 is in a power struggle right now, as we know, right? With the SEC and the Big 10 trying to break off as this power two. The Big 12 willingly ceded ground to the SEC on the Dallas-Fort Worth market this month. The SEC is doing media days in Dallas next week. The Big 12 elected to go to Vegas. They elected to go to Vegas. Now, they say that there were issues with booking AT&T Stadium, with soccer games that didn't work out. Okay. Why not go right up against the SEC next week? They're going to be in Dallas. You stay in Arlington. You go to AT&T Stadium. Just go head to head. And yes, they will outdraw you with national media. There's no doubt about it. But I would not be ceding ground. I would not be giving up my biggest media market in Dallas-Fort Worth to the SEC. I wouldn't do it. And I also worry that the media pull in Vegas is not going to be as large as it would be in Arlington. Now, don't get me wrong. Media guys like to drink and they like to gamble. I get it. Now, I'm not going, just to be clear. We're sending some staff members, but I'm not going. But we're not sending as many. You know, I mean, listen, I'm telling you, it's a lot more expensive to send the whole crew out to Vegas than it is to send the whole crew down to Dallas. So it's more convenient for the new Four Corner schools being in Vegas, but it's less convenient for the other 12 schools, and it's less convenient for, media folks who cover the other 12 schools. So maybe you get a little more national media being in Vegas. Maybe some goobers come over from LA. I don't know. Maybe that's what happens. I obviously want it to be a huge hit for the Big 12, and I'll have full coverage for you on that. But I just wonder whether or not this is going to turn out to be the best move for the Big 12, especially when the SEC is going to be in your backyard the following week. That part, I don't get it. I really don't. But I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for it to be a home run. But I think you're going to have less local coverage from the folks that cover the teams and maybe a little more national. But I don't know. You've got a lot of national college football guys who are in Dallas, who are, in Atlanta, who will come to Dallas, who will come from New York, who also will come from LA to go to Dallas. Now, they'll also go to Vegas, but how many of the rest of them are going to go to Vegas this week? We'll find out. We'll see. But it wouldn't shock me if a lot of them end up staying home as well because they're going to be at SEC and Big Ten Media Days in the weeks ahead, and there's not a lot of people just sitting there in Vegas who cover the sport nationally. There are, from a betting perspective, but like the national reporters that we all think about. I'm not sure how many of them are actually going to end up showing up. So that is something that needs to be followed, needs to be watched, and we'll be covering it here on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. Hit the thumbs up right below the video if you are on YouTube. Subscribe to the show as well. We don't ask you for anything. All right? We don't. Everything that we do is free. On the website, on the show, YouTube, podcasts, forums, it's all free. All we ask you to do is subscribe, consume the content, share it with 5 friends, and hit the 5-star if you're on the podcast, because that's how this thing keeps building brick by brick. There is no off season. We are bringing you the best content we can 24/7 here at Heartland College Sports, covering the Big 12. Carla says, why not Kansas City? Well, they do Big 12 basketball media days in Kansas City. For those that don't know, that is where I'm located and based out of. So I would love it. But I get it. They do basketball up here. It's where the Big 12 basketball tournament is. Maybe they don't want to be too Midwest-centric. That's why Dallas is perfect, because it's where you end your season. It's where the Big 12 headquarters are located. So I love it. And even if AT&T Stadium wasn't around or available, you know what I would do? I would just put it at the Star in Frisco. That's the Cowboys' backup practice facility, where they had it several years ago when I first started covering the league. They'd do it up in Frisco. It was pretty cool. All right, a lot of you keep asking the question, when are the new teams going up? They are going up this month. It becomes official on August 2nd. So that's when all this is going to happen. That's when we're going to talk about it. Question from Stormy Cyclone on YouTube. It will be interesting to see if Brett Yormark has something up his sleeve at Media Days. Realignment news, probably not a topic. Great question. Let me answer it. I'm Pete Mundo at Heartland College Sports. Thank you for being here. I left that out of my top 5 storylines to follow for a reason, because I really don't think there's going to be any news. Yormark will be asked about it. Yormark will have some kind of prepared remarks on it. But unlike other clickbaity outlets, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, yep, Yormark's ready to add some ACC teams this week. Now, I love talking about it. It's fun to talk about. We can have the conversation. I will do it through the premise of this is what I would like to see happen, not this rumor that I'm hearing through some no-name X account might actually be true. Click here for more. I'm not going to do that on this show. I respect you too much to do that. So that's why I left Yormark and Realignment off the list, because I would just be stunned if anything on that front came out. I think we're sitting here in what is the calm before the next storm in conference realignment. We're all just waiting on the legal issues in the ACC to figure themselves out. And Yormark's not going to comment on that because it's ongoing litigation. You don't have to be an attorney to realize commenting on ongoing litigation and then pursuing teams who are still a part of a conference publicly when there is ongoing litigation is suicide. You can't do it if you're Brett Yormark. So yes, I expect a question or two of Brett Yormark around the idea of what might be next. I expect some vague answers from Brett Yormark, things that he said before. We're always open for business. He's made that comment over the last couple of years. What that means is left up to interpretation. But I'm not expecting a whole lot on the whole idea of conference realignment, where it goes from here, what it looks like. There's no doubt that Brett Yormark is staying ahead of the conference realignment game. That is indisputable. The guy has been ahead of the curve every step of the way. But do I think we're sitting here with Brett Yormark getting set on Tuesday morning to roll out some big announcement? Yeah, I'm talking to Virginia Tech. Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely would love UNC in our conference. Gosh, Miami would look good with the Big 12 logo on its field, wouldn't it? No, that's not going to happen. No way, no how. So that's where I would pump the brakes on anything like that taking place this week. I'm sure some different folks in Big 12 media or elsewhere will try to convince you otherwise, but I'm just here to give it to you straight. I'm not going to give you the BS. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, just watch, don't miss out. Yormark's going to talk realignment, more at 10. Click on our link. I'm not going to do that. I will be stunned if it comes up. I also will be stunned if OU and Texas get a lot of energy. I'm hopeful that Brett Yormark will basically just move on and say, hey, they're gone. I'm not here to talk about the past. I am here to talk about the future. I am here to talk about the 16 teams, the progress that we have made as a conference, and what this conference will look like in the future. That's what I'm here to talk about, not about what the last 25 to 30 years looked like in the Big 12. OU and Texas are gone. We wish them well. And if I was given a little bit of advice to Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, I would say have fun with the headache down in Austin. because I promise you, the folks in Austin will end up being a massive headache for Greg Sankey and the entire SEC. Texas has historically, more or less, ruined every conference it's been a part of because of its own ego and pride. So why would the SEC be any different? It's a legitimate question. It's a fair question to ask. And I would love it if Brett Yormark said that, but I don't expect him to. I really don't think this week's going to be about Brett Yormark, and that's not a bad thing. I think this week needs to be a celebration. It needs to be a branding opportunity. And it needs to be about the new faces coming together as one and forming what is going to be, I believe, the most exciting league in all of college football this year, and that's the Big 12 Conference. Subscribe to the show. Hit that thumbs up at the bottom of the video. We appreciate you guys being here and joining us as a part of the show. Thank you, as always. Subscribe, hit the thumbs up. It really does make a huge difference as we continue to build this show at Heartland College Sports. A lot of you saying Houston for a future Big 12 Media Days. I'm good with that. It is technically the biggest city in Texas. You want to look at Orlando? That's a good spot as well. Obviously, everybody flies direct to Orlando, relatively cheap flights. So, I love those ideas. I am not sold on Vegas, but we'll see how it goes this week. We will have all the coverage for you at Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. Thank you. If you're not on the forums yet, sign up. We'll have a lot of exclusive content there. I was asking for questions for this live stream tonight on the forums this afternoon. So I was answering some of those questions, getting some of those in. Make sure you're signed up for those. We'll have some content there as well that you won't get in other parts of the website. So free place to join and talk to other Big 12 fans. We appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. William writes, glad you're starting to warm up to Ute Nation. Hey, man, that's a credit to our forums. If it was only social media, I wouldn't feel that way. But we've got a lot of Utah fans flooding our forums, and they're all great, normal, regular people excited to be in the Big 12. So I want to make sure I pass that message on to you because social media, as we know, is not real life. I'm Pete Mundo. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Go Big 12. Busy week ahead. We'll have you covered here at Heartland College Sports.